If your brand belongs in the heart of the yachting world, this is where it happens. Yachting International Radio reaches over 1 million yachting professionals and enthusiasts every month, with 77 million impressions, 220,000 social followers, and 74,000 podcast subscribers. Our hosts are insiders, crew, captains, CEOs, trusted voices shaping the industry. This is targeted, high-impact advertising in a luxury niche. Visit yachtinginternationalradio.com/advertise. Your audience is already listening.
Jeroen, welcome to Yachting USA.
Thank you.
It's good to be back in this office. I'm really pleased to be sitting with you, the new CEO of Heesen.
Most welcome.
All right. And welcome, of course, to our side of the pond in Fort Lauderdale. And let's just talk about Heesen Yachts, because it's not the Heesen yacht I was speaking to a while ago. And this seems to be actually some pretty exciting changes and things happening right now.
True.
Good stuff.
Well, I think the biggest news, obviously, is the acquisition of Heesen Yachts by Lawrence Lust, the new owner. So we're truly a Dutch shipyard again.
Bravo.
As we're very proud of that legacy.
You should be.
We carry in the Netherlands.
You should be. And then you've taken over the position of CEO. And so that happened in August. So between April and August, a lot of things were kind of moving around.
True, yeah. And in that period, we've been mapping out our strategy going forward for the yard, including product development, including manufacturing technologies, including organizational structure. And we had, let's say, a flying start at the Monaco Yacht Show at the back end of September.
Yeah, I was there. I'd be remiss, though, not to mention that also in April, while the acquisition was happening, we lost Frans Heesen. And I just mentioned that because I've known that gentleman since the late 1980s, and he was always a gracious host and a gentleman. And as the namesake and legacy of the shipyard, just nothing but respect and love. So sorry for that loss, but here we go. And the next generation and the next iteration, so to speak, is going.
Well, I think also with the ownership of Lawrence Last, I want to bring back that entrepreneurship within Heesen. Also that family ownership in the shipyards, which I think is very welcomed and appreciated by all of our employees.
Do I understand correctly that Lawrence was also a yachtsman?
Yes, he is. Yes. He is a very fanatic kite surfer, sailor, yachtsman. So, he carries the same passion for the ocean like I do. And I think that's what we have in common in that sense.
I love it. It's in the DNA.
I think it helps that he owns also a super yacht. So from a user perspective.
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
He brings a lot of insights and new product development.
Oh, no, it's inevitable for sure. So let's talk about you a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your background, your story. How did you ultimately end up where you are? And it didn't happen overnight, needless to say. I understand you have a bit of an engineering background, but even before that, what was your love of the ocean and what moved you in this space?
Well, I was 5 years old when I had my first journey onto the sea.
Yeah.
My father was captain for Ned Lloyd. He was a sea pilot later on from Vlissingen to Antwerp. And when I was 5 years old, it was my first coastal journey from Rotterdam port to Hamburg.
Oh, wow.
On an ocean-going vessel. I think I grew up with the ocean and the sea, and this whole maritime society in Zeeland, in the Netherlands, inspired me to kind of work in engineering, because I like to create, I like to manufacture. And effectively, I grew up next to the Schelde shipyard, which today is Amos. And when I was 12 years old, I was there for kind of a traineeship. And at that time, I thought one day I would like to own a yacht or to run a yacht. So
how about that? You put it in the universe and here you go, right? Yeah. Wow, that's cool. Engineering's in your DNA. You got a degree in engineering. And how do you, I'm just ask the question right way. Mechanical engineering, is it production engineering? You're looking at lean manufacturing, or what's your vision as far as the engineering side of your development?
Well, I've been intrigued by manufacturing processes and materials engineering as such. When I graduated, it was on propulsion systems for ships and for gas turbines for aircraft engines, the material side of it. And ever since then, I've been kind of intrigued by manufacturing processes and also to see what you can create in terms of value for clients with that knowledge. Because ultimately, you do not engineer just to engineer. Yeah. You engineer to create products that are required by markets.
Right.
And I was also intrigued that the processes in engineering are relatively slow because everything has to be proven, designed, tested, etc. So later on, I specialized in, let's say, lean manufacturing technologies in order to reduce lead time in the operating processes.
That's important. And when you talk about a build cycle on a large yacht and you're working with high net worth individuals, time is precious. That's the one commodity that is probably most valuable.
True.
So, if you're going to put together a production or semi-production boat and you're going to deliver on an X, Y, or Z date, you need to make sure you do.
I think if you break it down, in essence, it's about the engineering process in itself. And then it certainly depends whether you make a full custom yacht or whether you have a semi-custom yacht or a spec boat. The second part is the integration of systems from selected suppliers. So I truly believe that a good collaboration between Heesen and its vendors is of essence, because in the end we're also kind of a system integrator in what we do.
Yeah.
And it all has to work like a timepiece together in terms of reliability and accuracy. And the third element is the human factor, because a yacht consists of approximately 80,000 hours of labor, and to organize that in an efficient way is an art in itself.
Well, and because you brought it up, I like talking about this, because in my circles, you too often hear people maligning the whole mega yacht thing. What a waste of resource, what a ostentatious use of wealth, whatever. And I turn that around and I say, you misunderstand. It is one of the best ways of transferring wealth, because everything is hand done. There's so much labor that goes into building a yacht, more so than almost any other luxury product you could possibly imagine. And if you really understand, whether it's 86,000 hours of labor or 186,000 hours of labor, depending on the boat you're building, wow, what a incredible transference of value, changing labor for value. And most people miss that. They don't understand that.
I think the challenge is how you kind of sequence that labor in terms of process flow, because during the assembly of a yacht, you have a lot of processes executing simultaneously, from wiring to programming to interior outfitting to piping works to the whole, let's say, woodwork done in the boat. Whilst at the same time on the exterior, there's a lot of things going on as well. And to organize that in an efficient manner, I think it's essential to, first of all, secure the quality, and second, to be efficient in your build process.
I agree. How do you define build quality on Heesen? In other words, you have your own internal standards, which is typical for most successful shipyards, but you're also depending upon, as you mentioned a few minutes ago, your subcontractors, the outside people coming in. What are the parameters, or what are the benchmarks you guys place to make sure it can't just purely be the cost of the goods purchased? It's got to be more than that, I have to believe.
Well, I think the unique thing in Heesen is that we have a large integration of activities. So we do the naval architecture, we do the engineering, we do the complete interior design, but we're also manufacturer of the interior design. We do the hull laying, we do the paint systems. And by doing that, we have a lot of knowledge about the entire process of it. Then during that design process, we integrating our vendors and take their advice on gensets, on engines, on propulsion systems.
Right.
I think, and that combined makes us to produce a unique product.
Yeah, it makes sense. Makes perfect sense. We touched on this before we started this interview formally, but it's an interesting conversation. Very few shipyards can offer production, semi-production, and full custom. You normally pick one or two, but if you look at the portfolio and offerings of Heesen, you actually offer all three. How does that work? For instance, if you've got a 50-meter production yacht that you're going to be building, and it's going to be based on an existing set of parameters, and then you've got a client that comes in and says, "Oh, that's great, but I really like that 67-meter that I saw you guys deliver, and I want a custom version of that." Does one not disrupt the other, or do you have parallel production capabilities so that you can do the full custom and still maintain your production?
Manufacturing DNA is not something you build overnight. Heesen has more than 40 years of experience in superyacht building. Started with aluminium, then the landscape changed. Then we moved on to steel yachts, which is a different material, different design parameters you have to take in consideration. And so we adapted to that steel world step by step. then the market requires two types of yachts, I would say, full custom or semi-custom. And in our setup, that works really well because it's in our DNA. It's part of how we design, how we operate. Clients, they truly want to make their own yacht, choose for a full custom in the size range of 57, 60, 70 meters. And then we have our spec boats that we are designing ourselves, which we can customize to clients' needs based on interior colors, loose furniture, and still to make it their own kind of yacht.
Right.
These two things are different processes, but at the same time, they're kind of compatible.
Okay. So in other words, you don't see disruption on your series builds when you throw in a big custom build, so to speak?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Because that oftentimes is the big challenge.
I think what is important is the size of the vessels. And our sweet spot is between 50 and 70 meters, between 500 GTs and 1,1300 GTs. If you go to bigger yachts, like 80 to 100 meters, that will be kind of a different kind of challenge for a shipyard in terms of design process, but also in terms of manufacturing.
Now, Heesen did build a 80-meter, right?
True, yeah.
And so far, one.
A one-off, yes.
I asked the question simply because we've all watched what's happened in Northern Europe. Even Benetti started building some 100-meter yachts. Struggled, but they got, I think, 6 built. And then you see Lursen and now recently Fedship with a couple more 100-plus meter yachts, and they seemed like they're figuring it out. But I do know, just from my own experience working with shipyards, that the volume of those vessels, the classification society challenges, the regulations, the rules, just the everything, it's exponential. It's not linear by any stretch, and tough call sometimes. Do you see Heesen staying in your sweet spot, or is that looking down the ways something that you want to revisit in time?
Well, ultimately, it's where the market is moving, and I think over decades, the landscape is changing, the requirements are changing of owners. The usage of owners differs also from geographical territory. So for Heesen, it's to build a yacht that is desired by the owner. It's not a contest of making a bigger boat.
Right.
It is a contest of making a unique boat that an owner can identify himself on. We are very good in this segment of 50 to 70 meters. That's also where our future strategy is going to be. But we're going to differentiate within that kind of range.
Right.
So our future product development is on the usage of the vessel. And requirements in the United States are different from Europe, are different from the Middle East.
That's right.
In the Middle East, it's extremely hot. So interior space is a lot more important than for Northern European people. And that's not yet reflected in the product offering as we see it in the market.
Okay.
So our new platforms will kind of address those kind of requirements for this group of clientele.
It's interesting. And I can say, too, that I've watched some of the more recent yacht designs that are coming out, and you're getting a lot more yacht in a given space. A 60-meter yacht from 20 years ago is not a 60-meter yacht today. Between all the balconies and beach clubs and open deck spaces and the way that the naval architecture has evolved, I think you can stay in the footprint and still deliver a lot more boat than once upon a time we used to be able to.
True, and the functionality of the interior is also changing. We're also mindful after COVID that the whole AC systems on boats are playing a very important role in terms of hygiene, in terms of filtration, for instance. That we will see in our future product range reflected.
Yeah, that's a tough one, too, because when you look at the way you've got dissimilar metals, the steel or aluminum in the water, the heat transfer that occurs, which creates potential condensation. You got your air conditioning systems and your piping running through, and all of that moisture, if it's not contained and directed, becomes a problem. And that has been elusive for a lot of shipyards, and just something that simple can make a huge difference 10 years after delivery of the boat.
No, what I said earlier, I mean, the landscape is changing. I mean, our aluminium hull structures are very efficient because they have been originally designed for speed.
Right.
We see that also changing in the market. At the same time, hull structures of aluminium still carry a more shallow draft. A good example is Tosha, which was recently recognized with the Design Award. And that's the largest 57-meter boat that can enter into the Bahamas. Right. With a shallow draft of like 7 feet and 6 inches.
Yeah, just under 2 meters.
Yes.
That's incredible. So, when you think 57 meters, yeah.
But there are other group of clientele, they sail predominantly in the Mediterranean.
don't care.
It's not irrelevant.
Right.
So we're going to make our platforms dedicated for the usage. And obviously, yachts are also being transferred across the world to explore different sailing areas.
Yeah, well, we're going to touch on that in a minute. But before we do, I wanted to ask one design question that is tied to crew well-being on board yachts. And I've grown up and watched the industry profession change over time. But the biggest conversation that I get into, particularly when I'm around yacht managers and people involved in trying to keep the program working well for the owner, is the crew mindset. They have, call it the happiness or the health or the well-being of the crew. And oftentimes that starts where they live. The fact that they're on a very, ultimately, which will be on the ocean, a very small space amongst a lot of people. Does the shipyard look at things such as crew accommodations in that context of trying to create a better living environment for the crew to create a better experience for the owner?
Absolutely, because the crew is of importance for the owner's comfort. The crew is important for charters. So the first thing we'll look at is the routing in the yacht. How is the routing from crew quarters to the galley to the owner's spaces in terms of servicing, in terms of livability, in terms of efficiency? And owners are also putting a lot of attention to the crew quarters because they put value on it, that they can operate in a comfortable, because ultimately owners are served by a crew that has a long service with them, and to limit crew rotation on it. We see that crew and captains are very proud to drive Heesen Yachts, which is good. And we also take a lot of input from captains, from chief engineers, how user-friendly our vessels are, how we can improve on maintenance, how we can improve on refrigerating space, for instance, which is very important.
Yeah.
And that also depends on how the vessel is being used, more for charter, more for private use.
Right.
So yes, we pay a lot of attention to that aspect of the design.
When you look at a vessel for private or for commercial, depends on the owner, what his intentions are most of your vessels suitable to go into commercial service at any given time, or do you build them specifically if you know you've got a vessel that's going to be predominantly charter vessel? Is it a slightly different boat than the boat that's going to be predominantly privately used and operated?
Well, if you look at the general arrangements of yachts, they follow quite a typical and traditional kind of style. And when you design a full custom for an owner, you draw a different GA than when it's designed for charters,
sure,
or for a hybrid kind of setup. And we are developing new ideas on how that GA is going to look like, which will be reflected in our new kind of model range.
Okay, I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like in the future. So let's talk about how you make that boat go from here to there. The days of just pure diesel drive systems is pretty much, if not fully obsolete, soon to be obsolete. I think they're, whether these vessels are going to be diesel electric or propulsion by other types of alternative fuels. I was recently on a breakthrough over when I was in the Netherlands last year, and we saw those cryogenic hydrogen fuel tanks. Took up a lot of real estate, but the technology was pretty cool. And so you have to ask the question, where are we going with all of this? Specifically with Heesen Yachts, you talk about a lot of your vessels were designed for speed, certainly durability or distance, being able to take your owners wherever they want to go. Steel hull, next step obviously is probably ice class, so you can get into Arctic areas and other areas. But there's some places now that you can only go if you have zero emission, a completely green footprint. Talk to us. What's the vision that Heesen Engineering is bringing forward right now?
I think the first thing what is important to set out is that the efficiency of a yacht is determined by the hull shape. And we have put a tremendous amount of work in designing and developing the most efficient hull shape in the industry. And that's has been predominantly driven by the fact that we were in fast displacement hulls.
Yeah.
So that gives us a giant leap forward compared to other product offerings in the market. And today there is then a wide range of alternative offerings. Diesel electric, there is the zero emission kind of requirement. First to start import, so to be zero emission import. And the second part is to be as fuel efficient as you can be. So weight distribution plays an important role. So using lightweight materials in the superstructure, more carbon fiber materials in the interior space. So that all helps to kind of minimize basically the fuel consumption of vessels. Then there is the methanol option
LNG,
that we are
like
fully compatible with. And then ultimately, it also depends on what the market kind of requires and what, let's say, the governments are going to drive forward.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, for instance, that's the emission standards the U.S. has come up with on diesel engines, and, having to use that Uric tank kind of system for getting the VOCs out of the system. It takes up real estate and it's expensive, but it solves a problem. I guess that really ties into also going back to delivering what your owner wants. I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that a lot of your owners are coming to you and asking you for more ecological sound solutions. I think that's probably a fair assessment that owners are going to drive this as well.
Yeah, I think our approach to that is also the whole product lifecycle management approach that we are integrating in our engineering solutions. And that goes from the selection of materials, the use of the materials, until the disposal of materials. Because at some point in time, the vessels will have to undergo kind of a refit. And how about the reuse of existing materials in a new interior design, for instance?
Right. No, and everything we just talked about, when I spent a little time researching the Heesen information available before we sat down, I was reading about your Blue Nautek. Did I say that right?
Blue Nautek. Yeah.
Blue Nautek, okay. Which really is describing a number of elements that you incorporate into your design philosophy that gets us to exactly what we talked about. Hull efficiency, improving propulsion efficiency, energy saving an anchor, which is what I call maintaining the hotel loads and trying to get those off grid as much as possible, and sustainable operations. What do you do? And I read something. It's funny because I come from the world of tender handling and bringing tenders on and off boats, and the whole idea of electric tenders, brilliant, because the technology is there now. You don't have to have gasoline powered tenders or even diesel powered tenders to do 90% of what most tenders are going to be asked to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's a combination of range and utilization,
Right.
and we need to balance that.
Right. Do you see the day when you have a dominantly electrically powered and propulsioned yacht, or is that too far out?
I think that's still quite a stretch.
Okay.
Because in the end, it's water displacement. So your friction through the water is different than with automobiles, for instance.
Well, yeah. So this is, in other words, this is a problem that Musk is not going to just turn around tomorrow and solve.
You still have a lot of displacement to overcome. So
yeah, no, I get that.
Oh, and also options. You've also seen it in commercial vessels where they've tried even with kite propulsion.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it?
So, yeah.
I mean, that's got to be a lot of surface area, a lot of sail area to have a kite pull a boat through the water of any size. So
with a new owner who's quite a kite fanatic, you never know how that's going to look like in our new designs.
Someone's going to come up with an idea one day, and everybody else will go, "Why didn't I think of that?" Yeah. That's but that's how it happens. So I do like to talk about the impact of the U.S. market on the European shipbuilding industry. As you and I know, the U.S. shipbuilding industry has suffered greatly over the years. And so much of the vessels that used to be built in the United States are not being built elsewhere. Northern Europe has done a wonderful job of taking market share because they're delivering value and reputation, I think. There's no, it is what it is. If you build a great product, people are going to come buy it. And that's what they're doing. So I have seen the Heesen fleet here in South Florida expand a lot over the last decade. I don't think I can go into a marina now without seeing one or two of your boats, which is pretty cool. So the U.S. client is a strong market for you. Do you do anything different to attract the U.S. client than you do for clients from other parts of the world? Do you build a, quote, U.S. boat, or is it just a Heesen?
Well, I think there's two things. It's a Heesen and it's Dutch. And I think America and Holland go back centuries.
Yes.
So I think there is that bond that is there for many centuries that reflects respect, that reflects reliability. And I think that's the reason for the success. If you look at Heineken, Heineken doesn't brew any beer in the United States.
Right.
It's all imported from the Netherlands.
That's right.
So, and the same is with Heesen Yachts. So I think we should stick with that kind of philosophy.
Okay, no, I'm with you. You just, yeah, because it is remarkable how the U.S. market has really been attracted to what you guys do and has fallen in love with the boats that you're building.
But I think that applies for the entire Dutch superyacht industry. And we had a very strong history of building commercial vessels. We have over, I think, 180 shipyards in the Netherlands still today.
Think about it.
So that's a lot. But most of them have been converted into luxury or pleasure or superyacht construction sites. Because of the competition of commercial vessels, there has been a period where also naval vessels have been manufactured at the Schelde still today at Damen.
Right.
So I think this whole industry has converted into superyacht market and did that quite well.
So before we wrap up, the last thing I really want to talk about is you mentioned the boats that ultimately need to be refit, serviced. When I was here last, we were talking about the relationship with Safe Harbor Marinas and how much support they were providing Heesen. But in the year and a half since we had that conversation, what I've watched is for instance, Fedship pull out of Savannah and set up their own refit yard over in the Netherlands in Amsterdam. I watch Huisman with Huisfit do the same thing. And there seems to be the trend of, okay, we want to keep the brand integrity on our boats, so we want our technicians and our people doing it. I've been to Haas, I've seen the shipyard. With this big fleet, I don't know how you would bring those boats back there, but do you have plans or you have infrastructure coming together to support this fleet now in 5 years, 10 years, and 20 years from now?
Well, I think I would differentiate between a number of things. Number one is, let's say, the serviceability of our vessels. So we are creating, I think here Fort Lauderdale is a very good example with Heesen, being present here, having an after-sales team here on the ground, sitting here in port, basically. That provides a good help for service and for repairs on vessels that occurs. It maps out a strategy at the moment where we want to have 3 main service hubs, one in Florida, one in the Mediterranean, and one in Dubai, to cover geographically our most dominant markets.
Yeah.
The second thing we're investing a lot of technology and know-how in is remote diagnosis and control that can help us in predictive maintenance. So we can plot basically a trip from A to B and say, okay, upon the port of arrival, your filters needs to be kind of replaced, your pumps needs to be inspected, and we can have a team deployed that is taking care of those.
Right.
And there's a lot of technology on board that we can monitor remotely.
Yep.
And all these parameter settings will result into kind of a predictive maintenance advice for the chief engineer or for the captain. So we can notify them so to ensure that their next charter is not being disrupted or that the next itinerary with their owner is not disruptive. So that's the second important thing. The third one is the refit. Today, Heesen is not doing refits, and that's an activity we are exploring at the moment because that's something we want to do going forward.
It makes sense.
That is not necessarily has to be done at the same yard where we are building our boats, because we also have a height restriction, as you might know, on the river de Maas.
Yes, you do.
We're quite far inland, and today it's already a big challenge. We take off the top part of the yacht, we sail it under the bridge, and then we reassemble it again. So that's going to be most likely more adjacent to the North Sea. But still, I would see that inside the Netherlands.
Okay, yeah, because all these boats, steel hull or aluminum hull, are going to have 5-year, 10, and 20-year special surveys. That's a lot of yard time out of the water, a lot of labor, a lot of man hours go into there, and that's always the question: where is it done, and who does it, and who takes responsibility for it when it's all done and said.
No.
Yeah.
No, I think strategically that's something Heesen wants to offer to their group of clientele going forward. But that requires proper preparation.
Yep.
And also proper expansion of capacity and knowledge amongst engineers who are undertaking that activity.
Yeah. No, that's growth. That's for sure. And it's managed, planned growth. So final question, final topic, if you will. You're at the helm now. This is you're only a couple months in.
5 weeks.
5 weeks. Kind of kicked it off in Monaco, and here you are in floats, and here we go. In your view, what would be your next big thing? What are you wanting to achieve as the director of the company now?
I want to have satisfied customers. I want to have customers that desire our products and that we are building their lifetime dream.
That's simple.
And it's complicated.
Yes, exactly true. It takes a little bit of an engineering mind and an entrepreneurial spirit to get there. But I think you've got a great team in place. I've known Tom for over 30 years, and I've watched his career go. And then, you have Lawrence now at the helm. And
I think that's the secret of any successful company is people in the end, because people create, people develop, people driving a company forward.
Yeah.
And I think Tom Conboy here in the US is a great example. I mean, our relationship goes back almost 25 years ago to 2001. So I think next year is the 25th anniversary of that collaboration.
Think about it.
So, and then you see what it means for Holland, which is a small country, to have a rich network of business partners around the globe, which is very important to reach our clientele.
It's collaboration. That's what it comes down to. And that's where success really is created, is in good collaboration. Wow, this is really good. I have to thank you for your time and for the candor and the opportunity to have this conversation. I hope I don't have to go another year and a half before we talk again. But between now and whenever we see each other again, I hope you really have a good time at the helm of this amazing operation. And I think you're part of something pretty special.
I feel very privileged to helm Heesen towards the future. So yeah, that's for sure.
I like this. Well, again, I thank you, Jeroen.
Thank you very much.
It's really a pleasure to speak with you today. Hope you have a great week.
You too. And they're most welcome to visit us on Ila or Bookends.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And of course, we're going to be on your side of the pond here in a couple of weeks. And I should leave it at this because Tristan travels with me. He's behind the camera and the microphones. And we were in Monaco, and I said, what do you think? He says, I like Amsterdam better. So take that for what you will. But I think it's the Dutch culture and what comes of it that I think creates that kind of that vibe, that gravitas, so to speak. So until the next time, I'll see you on your side of the pond, perhaps.
Good.
And until the next time, I'm out of here.